I would say to you, Ryan Nobles, boy, don't you wish you were back here? Because things are so much crazier here, but I'm not sure we can say that. I mean, it's crazy here, but it ain't crazy like it is in Washington.
Bill, I hear the name Bill Morehouse, Tim Julian, Joe Habaika. It's like 15 years ago when I was in the middle of all this. And you're also talking about petitions.
I know.
I know a thing or two about petitions in Oneida County for sure.
Yeah.
A good man's hard to find, Ryan. Remember that.
Yeah, that is the case. Ryan Nobles, good morning. What's the so? What is we're dealing with tweets about the NFL? Back and forth. My brain is bigger than your brain. And you've got North Korea, Corker. You have the tax, potentially a real sweeping tax bill out there. What is going on? What are we supposed to focus on here?
Well, I mean, it's been the hallmark of the Trump presidency, and that's inconsistency and instability, and you never know what to focus on at any given time. You know, I was at the White House all weekend, and initially we were talking about this flap between the president and Secretary Tillerson and perhaps his chief of staff in the middle of it. And by the end of the night on Sunday, we were back to talking about the NFL and the vice president walking out of a game, which clearly seemed to be a staged PR stunt by the White House to try and keep that that issue in the forefront. You know, I mean, I think that you're right.
Can we just think about that? I just for a moment, because the president came out and said, totally not staged. That was completely an impromptu moment. Okay, you're telling me the vice president didn't know they were going to kneel, and then when they did, it's like, you know what? I can't believe they've done this. I'm walking out. I mean, it just totally was a...
The president himself in two different tweets, and then they confirmed it later. The president himself admitted that he and the vice president had a conversation about him being at that game, and if the players knelt, that he was to walk out. So they clearly had this plan from the beginning. And there's also some misunderstanding or apparently some not clear facts as to why the vice president went to the game in the first place. The White House at first claimed that he was invited by the Colts to go because it was Peyton Manning's, his number was being retired. But the Colts say that he wasn't invited. So, you know, there's a lot that is hard to understand about this whole situation.
Yeah. Wasn't there an explanation, too, that this had been on his calendar for several weeks, even prior to the season beginning, that he was planning on being at that game?
Right. That's what they're claiming. But the problem is with that, Jeff, is that we have to take their word for it. We have no idea what these schedules look like. They don't put their schedules out that far in advance. I mean, there's many times that we don't get the president and the vice president's schedule until, minutes before.
Sure.
Ryan,
so the idea that we can confirm that is hard.
I want to ask you, do you? Because I have Rob here saying, listen, it worked. Trump won this deal with the NFL. It's over. I don't necessarily. It's going to be interesting to see what happens this weekend. What happens at this owners' meeting. Is this over? Has the president won here, and the NFL players are now going to become submissive?
Well, I think a lot of it depends on your definition of winning, and I do think that in the president's mind and with the president's, set of goals and his motivations, I do believe this is a winning issue. I mean, I know people who are very good people, friends of mine, family members who canceled their NFL Sunday ticket because of that.
That's big right now. Yep.
And it wasn't necessarily because of the president itself, but, he has latched onto a message that resonates with people. People care about the flag.
Yeah.
And then he's tied it to the military, which none of these people protesting have tied it to the military. So I think that from that perspective, he feels like he has momentum behind this issue. Now, I don't foresee Roger Goodell going to the owners and trying to force them to get these guys to stand is going to end well for the NFL. The guidance they put out now is that they should stand, which isn't mandatory. But the NFL is one of the most powerful players' unions in all of professional sports. I can't imagine that they're just going to roll over and accept some new edict handed down by a commissioner who, by the way, doesn't have is not very popular with his group of players.
Well, remember this.
So no, I don't think it's over yet.
This did start to grow a little bit when other players and the players' union was standing up for Kaepernick because he couldn't get a job, and then of course the president threw some gasoline on it, and we are where we are today. But yeah, I don't think it's over. But Rob says the president won when Goodell actually came out and spoke and took a stance. So, well, it is. But now we're talking about NFL here. The world, I mean, there's talk of nuclear war. There's talk of World War III. There's talk about what gets done. Corker's saying the only thing in between us and chaos are the staff members that prevent the president from actually doing what? I mean, this is just crazy right now. And remember, this is all craziness that is not involving Democrats.
Right. And, you know, Bill, I just want to paint a picture for you. I was at the White House Friday night. And end of the long week, the president had just done a very brief photo spray with all of his generals. And we were told that there was a lid for the night, which means that the president's not going to do any more public appearances, and everybody can essentially go home. And we'd actually left the White House already, and a colleague of mine and I were chatting up a Secret Service agent when all of a sudden we got this alert that the pool, which is the small group of reporters that gets to go into certain events, was being called back to the White House. So we all sprinted inside the White House to prepare for this, and this photo spray was the president standing with these generals, and that's when he said, this represents the calm before the storm. Yeah. Now, theoretically, that's just, you know, the president saber-rattling. He's known to do that. He's prone to hyperbole. But why do they go to those great lengths to bring the press back in so he can make this statement if he's not trying to hint at something? And then for the next 48 hours, the White House had multiple opportunities to clarify what the president was saying, and their answer was, you will see. You will see. So what is he trying to do here? And so when you then match that up with Bob Corker's comments that the president, you know, is his temperament is on the verge of leading us to World War III, I can understand why some Americans might be unsettled with exactly what's going on in the White House.
Yeah. Yeah, are we dealing with crazy man at the top? Our policy's not worked up to this point with North Korea, so we're going to just make him think that at any point this president could go to nuclear war. I mean, is that what the goal is?
I mean, that's certainly what the White House wants you to think.
But by the way, you know, that's relying on a sound mind when it comes to Kim Jong-un.
Right.
Okay? That's very important that no one is talking about here. So the crazy guy is going to be coming as Trump, and we're going to rely on the civility, the level-headedness of Kim Jong-un. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that.
Right. I mean, what you're doing is it's a calculated risk for sure that this, out of all the other things that have happened to Kim Jong-un, is going to scare him in to, you know, either giving up his reign on his country or just disarming his nuclear armament completely. Literally the only chip that Kim Jong-un has to play are nuclear weapons. They don't have any money.
Yeah.
They don't have any resources. They don't have stability in any way, shape, or form. Is this going to be, you know, if you're being, and then take that back a step, if what you're being threatened with is nuclear or is a military force, would you give up your only military weapon to try and prevent that from happening? I find that hard to believe, but, you know, he's the president, so he's the one that's going to make these decisions.
I've never seen Tim Julian not want to pipe in. What do you think? I can give you 20 seconds.
Look, I mean, I can think about hinting around to a lot of things, but nuclear war is probably one of those things you really want to hint around to.
Not a good hint.
Before the storm. You know, and it's great to hear Ryan's insight on that, especially because he's, you know, familiar with how we kind of think up here as well. And you know, it's just it's interesting, but I mean, it is a threat. It is a viable threat. You got a guy lobbing bombs over the top of Japan and you know, toward our west coast, and it's pretty much intimated that he's going to do that. I think it does need to have some sort of a harsh reaction. Myself, I wouldn't be out there hinting around that I'm going to do something.
This is the calm before the storm.
But you know, certainly, I think it does need a strong reaction.
The interesting part that I didn't know about the story, Ryan, is that they called you guys back in for the president to do that. That's very
and that never happens. I mean, this is a lot of like the kind of behind the scenes of what it's like to cover the White House.
Yeah.
If they say there's a lid for the night, I mean, I would think, you know, the time I can think of where the pool was called back after a lid was called was when Obama announced that they'd killed Osama bin Laden.
Right.
I mean, that's the level of necessity that it takes to call the pool back. So it's just a very rare occurrence.
Wow. Ryan, as always, great talking to you. Ryan Nobles, Washington correspondent, CNN. Thanks so much.
All right.
We'll do it again
next week.
Next
All
week.
Right, bye-bye.
See us next week. I'm excited about that. I'll be up for the roast.